Africa. Welcome to Africa. Good morning. The news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. We certainly hope you enjoyed your Africa Day weekend. These are some of the top stories we're looking at today. Ramaphosa makes last pitch to voters ahead of Wednesday's elections. Comoros President sworn in for fourth term after disputed poll. And gold mine collapse in northern Kenya leaves 5 people dead. We'll also be talking to talent Gore. She brings us the news stories from Zimbabwe, and Ari Hohad will bring us the sport. After the break, we get into the top stories.
Neo Paints has established a 67-year Namibian legacy, creating personalized paint solutions that blend quality and innovation for the Namibian people. We pride ourselves in being a 100% Namibian-owned company, investing in our country and our people by employing and empowering true Namibians. With every brushstroke, Neo Paints commits to our quality guarantee and always delivering a coat of excellence. At Neo Paints, we always stay true to our country. We are as Namibian as you.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa said the country endured a decade of state capture and corruption in an unusual address that spoke about the highlights and achievements of the 6th administration. Ramaphosa was addressing the nation yesterday evening ahead of the May 29 national and provincial elections in a last pitch to voters in his speech. The elections are expected to be the most contested polls since the dawn of democracy 30 years ago. The president's address sounded very similar to the African National Congress at the FNB Stadium in Soweto on Saturday, rather than a stump speech to the nation. Ramaphosa said the elections brought the 6th administration to an end, which took over after 10 years of corruption and state capture. We dislodged the criminal networks that had stolen billions from our people, that had eroded our public institutions, and that had undermined the rule of law. On Friday, I signed into new legislation that will establish the NPA's Investigating Directorate against corruption as a permanent entity. There is too much that we need to do to end corruption. However, as a country, we have sent a clear message to the corrupt that they can no longer expect to get away with their crimes with impunity and without consequence, Ramaphosa said. Over 130 people have died in a single hospital in Sudan's besieged city of El Fasher in the Darfur region, according to medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières. Fighting between rival groups in Sudan's civil war in the battle for control of the city has recently intensified. The situation was terrible, one resident told the BBC, with hospitals and markets experiencing violent artillery shelling. El Fasher is a last major urban center in Darfur that remains in the hands of the Sudan's army. The army has been fighting the paramilitary rapid support forces for more than a year in a civil war that has killed thousands and forced millions from their homes. The army remains in control of El Fasher. The city has become a refuge for people displaced by fighting in other areas. An illegal gold mine collapsed in Kenya, leaving at least 5 miners dead, according to police yesterday. Now, the collapse of the Hilo mine in the Dabel area near the Kenyan border with Ethiopia on Friday was attributed to a landslide. Marsabit County Police Commander Patrick Mwakio said the miners died on the spot after the debris covered them. No other miners have been found, and it was not clear if anyone else was missing in the collapse. Interior Minister Kithure Kindiki in March declared the area disturbed and banned mining activities after clashes over a mining dispute led to the deaths of 7 people. The mining activities were also in violation of the law because no environmental impact assessment had been done, and the tunnels were described as weak and on the brink of cave-in. Residents told media outlets that mining had continued despite the March ban and blamed authorities for allowing it. Now, Comoros President Azali Osmani pledged on Sunday to work for peace and rapidly grow the economy as he was sworn in for his fourth term in office following a tense January election, which his opponents claim was tainted by voter fraud. One person was killed and at least 25 injured in violent protests that erupted in the country, a group of 3 islands off the coast of Mozambique, after the election body declared him re-elected to another 5-year term with 63% of the vote. Comoros, with a population of about 800,000, has experienced around 20 coups or attempted coups since winning independence from France in 1975 and is a major source of irregular migration to the nearby French island of Mayotte. Opposition leaders claimed the latest presidential poll was rigged, alleging instances of ballot stuffing and of voting being ended before the official closing time. The government denied the claims. Disputes after the elections are not a Comorian exception. I thank the Comorians for the renewed trust. I will not disappoint you, Asomani said at a ceremony in a stadium in the capital, Moroni. After this inauguration, I invite civil society, the opposition, and all political actors to put aside differences in favor of peace and democracy, said the former army officer, adding he would grow the economy by 5% per year. Now, Burkina Faso's military rulers will remain in power for another 5 years after national talks ended in agreeing to extend the transition back to democracy by 60 months from July, according to the text of an approved new charter. The duration of the transition is fixed at 60 months from July to 2024. Colonel Moussa Diallo, chairman of the organizing committee of the national dialogue process, said after the talks on Saturday. The new charter was signed during what was originally a 2-day national dialogue that began earlier on Saturday, ostensibly to chart a way back to civilian rule in the country rocked by political violence. The military seized power in a 2022 coup and had promised to hold elections in July of this year to restore civilian rule, but it also said security considerations would take priority. The elections marking the end of the transition may be organized before this deadline if the security situation so permits, the new charter signed by military leader Ibrahim Traore states. Those have been our top stories on Africa Good Morning. After the break, we continue to decentralize the news, this time getting the latest stories on the ground from Zimbabwe from talent Gore. Stay with us.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
Now, these are some of the top stories stemming from Zimbabwe. Government approves licensing of Starlink in the country, keeping in mind that government had previously banned Starlink. About 30% of basic foodstuffs such as bread, mealie meal, and sugar are being sold in informal retail shops and are underweight. That's the other story. And a team of 500 experts from Switzerland are expected in the country to finish constructing 18 state-of-the-art villas. Here is Talent Gore with those stories. Talent Wamukase, please take it away.
Africa. So Zimbabwe has finally approved the licensing of Starlink by the Postal and Telecommunications Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe to provide internet and related digital services in the country through its partner IMC Communications Limited, which is a local firm owned by businessman Wicknell Chivayo. Apparently, in the previous months, government and the citizens have been going back and forth. Citizens saying that the government should approve Starlink in the country because right now the service providers that are in the country, they are taking advantages of the citizens and they are charging a leg and an arm because internet was way too expensive, or rather it is way too expensive. So citizens are saying that Starlink should come on board so that there would be competition within that sector. So right now, the government has approved the licensing of Starlink, but it will be done through a local firm, or rather a local partner, which is a businessman, Wicknell Chivayo. He is quite linked to the president and the government. So he's the one who's been given the license, or rather the authority to provide the Starlink equipment to the citizens in Zimbabwe. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be seeing Zimbabweans starting to use Starlink. And also, my next story, about 30% of basic foodstuffs such as bread, mealie meal, and sugar being sold in formal retail shops are underweight. This was said, or rather, this was discovered through an investigation which was conducted by the Protection Commission. The probe, which covered shops in over 5 provinces, found that these products were labeled with the correct weight but contained far less than others. Like I said, I think I did a story last week where I said that most Zimbabweans, they rely on buying at these small retail shops, informal shops, because they are quite cheaper than supermarkets, than those big retail shops. So right now, people are being fleeced by those people. They are being sold things that are. And right now, an investigation has revealed that most of the products that are being sold there, they are underweight. You also find out that soft drinks alarmingly accounted for roughly 6% of all the expired goods. And most of these things are being done in Bari, which is Harare's oldest suburb. So people are taking their goods there, and they are backyards industries whereby people do whatever they want to do. If it's removing some grams, if it's selling expired goods when changing the expiry dates, that is where everything is happening in Bali. So this is a cause of concern in Zimbabwe, and the government has to work, or has to put some measures to ensure that citizens are not fleeced, the members of the public are not fleeced by the owners of these informal shops. And the last story, a team of 500 experts from Switzerland is expected in the country to finish constructing 18 state-of-the-art villas in Mount Hampton that will accommodate high-level dignitaries during the 44th SADC Heads of State and Government Summit, which is scheduled for August. The team from Mabetex Group, a Swiss civil engineering and construction company, will be complemented by 300 local artisans. And construction of the villas already begun and is scheduled to be complete by mid-July, well ahead of the summit, which is going to take place from 8 August to 18 August. So the government is going all out to develop the infrastructure requirements to successfully host the regional Indaba. So a lot is happening in terms of construction ahead of the SADC summit that is going to take place in August. Villas are being built, roads and more infrastructure development is happening in Zimbabwe. So the government is quite ready, with making sure that when the heads of state and government come in, everything will be in place, and they'll have a comfortable time in Zimbabwe. So those have
Thank you very much, Talent Gore, for bringing us the news stories as they are from Zimbabwe. We're going to swing over to the weather predictions before we return with economic news, as China gives tips to African youth. In economic news, authorities in China have implored African youths to maximize China-Africa cooperation to enhance socio-economic transformation on the continent. Deputy Director General of the Department of Foreign Affairs of Zhejiang Province, Shen Xianfeng, noted that the Chinese government, in partnership with African countries, has created various knowledge exchange programs which youths from Africa can leverage to improve their livelihoods and develop their countries. Shen said this in Jinhua during the opening ceremony of the 8th China-Africa Youth Festival, which has attracted 64 youth representatives from 52 African countries. He stated that the population of youths in Africa is high, hence youths are crucial to the China-Africa cooperation. Now, the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board has secured a 500,000 Namibian dollar sponsorship from O&L Leisure towards the hosting of the Africa Hospitality Investment Forum 2024. Announcing the sponsorship, O&L Executive Chairman and Managing Director of O&L Leisure, Sven Tiemann, congratulated the NIPDB for facilitating the winning bid for Namibia, an achievement which he said highlights a collective commitment to showcase Namibia's unique tourism potential on the international stage. In just 5 weeks, Namibia is expected to host over 300 hospitality industry investors, business leaders, government officials, and expert advisors from across the African continent after the country won the bid last year, facilitated by NIPDB, which also serves as the host partner in Namibia. AHIF is known to be a premier investment forum that gathers the highest caliber of international hotel investors, making it the most influential conference of its kind in Africa. Truly well done to them. Let's have a look at the economic indicators just before Ari brings us the sport. All right, Thari, before you take it away on the international front, it was a wonderful weekend for Namibian indoor hockey. The Indoor Hockey Africa Cup was taking place in Swakopmund, and both the Namibian men and women's teams have qualified for the Indoor Hockey World Cup set to take place in Croatia in 2025. Ari, take it away, brother.
Thank you, Ashwin. Yes, brilliant news. Nice to see, besides the Cricket World Cup coming up for Namibian men, also the hockey doing well, as you explained. Brilliant. Well done to the hockey, all the players and management and coaches. And let's move on to some more international sports news. FA Cup was big news over the weekend. Very sought after trophy that was played for more than 100 years old. And it was the Manchester United clubs that clashed there. It was the winner, Manchester United. They beat the title holders in the Premiership and Manchester City in the final by 2-1. So a big result for Manchester United, not only winning the title, but also qualifying for European football. They didn't do that in the Premier League. They were too low down on the log, but winning the FA Cup do qualify them to play in Europa League next year. Still uncertain if Erik ten Hag, the coach, will remain as coach. So it seems like there's still discussions going. We won them the FA Cup. We got them into Europe, but they finished third last year on the table in the Premier League. So it wasn't a good season for Manchester United all round. So we'll watch the news if Erik ten Hag still remain the coach. But well done to Manchester United winning the FA Cup 2024. Going on to some Formula One racing news, and it was the big one in Monaco. It was the Monaco Grand Prix, and a good story, great story for the racing driver that was born in Monaco. So that is Charles Leclerc. He won the race, a brilliant achievement for him, lifelong dream for him. Very emotional. He lost his dad to cancer just a year before he started with F1 racing, so he obviously was very emotional afterwards. It was in second place, it was McLaren, it was Oscar Piastri that was second, and third was another Ferrari, Carlos Sainz. So a good result for Ferrari 1 and 3. Not a good day for Red Bull. It was a log leader. Max Verstappen finished in 6th. That's where he qualified. So not easy to overtake in Monaco. Actually, it's impossible to overtake in Monaco. So it was where he started on qualifying, Max Verstappen 6th, and his teammate Sergio Perez crashing out in a horrific crash in the first lap, but he's all right. And so it wasn't a good weekend for Verstappen. But well done to Charles Leclerc, there on the left, winning the Monaco Grand Prix. Let's go on to some rugby news. It was a South African team that played in the European final. That doesn't sound right, but that's the way the competitions work at this moment. The Sharks that played in the European Challenge final. But firstly, that's the Champions Cup. Let's go there first. That's the biggest honor. That was a level higher, I can say. It was the two best ones in Europe. It was Toulouse from France. They're celebrating their win, beating Leinster of Ireland in the final, 31-22. They played at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and it was a good result for Toulouse. And it was their 6th title as Champions Cup in Europe. And for Leinster, it was their 3rd final in a row that they lost, a heartbreak for the Irish team. Then the Sharks did South Africa proud. There's the Sharks in action. That's the Challenge Cup, celebrating winning. They beat Gloucester in the final 36-22, quite a comprehensive win for them. Gloucester scored 2 tries in the last 5 minutes to make the score quite reasonable. So it was again scrum dominance from the Sharks, and that's a player I like to see in the Springbok jersey. That is Siya Masuku. He's a new sensation, kicking the goals, playing very well. He was the general for the Sharks in that final. Then just to close off, it is Roland Garros. It's going to be 2 weeks of exciting tennis. The French Open starting. They started yesterday. Most of the seeds will be in action through today. That is Novak Djokovic, number 1 seed in the men's division. He will be in action today. Big news today. Everybody can watch about 2:30 today Namibia time. It will be the game between Nadal and Zverev. Nadal playing his last tournament at French Open. That's Aryna Sabalenka. She's a number 2 seed in the women's division. They all get going as well. One result I can maybe mention, Sam Wawrinka. He's 39 years old. He played against a 37-year-old Andy Murray, and it's Sam Wawrinka that won. And that's a game of the day today. Those are the 2 players. Nadal on the left there. He's a 14-time Roland Garros winner. He plays against the 4th seed, Alexander Zverev, on the right. A difficult first-round game for him because of his high ranking in world rankings, but that's happening today. So that's the sports news today, international sports news, and hope you have a great sport day and sport week. We talk international sport through the week again. Bye-bye.
Let's get into the highlights from this morning's broadcast. Ramaphosa makes last pitch to voters ahead of 2024 elections on Wednesday in South Africa. 130 people die at Sudan hospital amid city siege. And China tips African youth. All right, and that China tips African youth is on economic cooperations and taking advantage of China and Africa's investments, rather. So that's been Africa Good Morning today. 1up2.com, DSTV 2 at 5, Go TV 25 is precisely where you can find us. From me and the Africa Good Morning team, Swereja Kanaga.